It looks like it's working. A little loud in my headphones, but right. Question is length. Here. Okay. That's a little loud for my taste. You know what they say, if it's too loud, you're too old, and I am definitely too old. All right, so let's see here. Will copying it from there do anything here? No, unlikely. We're gonna come here and we're gonna do it from here. Here. Share that. All right, let's take a look here at this. All right, I think it's working. I think everything's working. So that's exciting. I have no idea if it's a good idea. Crash. Okay. I don't need that. All right, so that's there. I think it's working. That seems to be going, but does this? All right, so that's fine. Okay, okay. It looks okay. Let's see what happens if I just click this. Okay, that looks pretty all right. Perfect for smartphones, like modern smartphones. I'll say that. So yeah. I have not gone live from any account on any service for real in a very long time. And I'm a little... Oh, that is coming through on my phone. I'm like, what? Where is that sound? And let me just... That's a good test. Okay, that sounds good. Or at least I think it sounds good. So, I'm a little out of practice on this one. I'm a little unsure, especially because this is my first time really going live on my YouTube channel as opposed to my old Twitch channel, which I don't think is like dead, but it's also like I think it became very clear to me that there are a lot of people who just don't use Twitch. They don't have Twitch. They don't know what it is. They don't really trust it. They're not sure kind of if it's, if it's a scam or whatever. And I think that's a little weird personally, just because of the things that people believe in this world. But I kind of understand that it's not exactly the right platform for so many of the things that I'm trying to accomplish here online. Oh, one of my cats came. Pretty sure that's Lola hanging out under the chair back there. So it's one of those things that I'm excited to try this. I have zero expectations for this morning and what this is going to look like for me. It's still quite loud in my ears. You guys get the right volume. I don't have the right volume. So that should be fine now. I hope. I'm clipping a little bit. I can see that. I'm clipping a little bit. Noise gate's good. Compressor is good. The output gain, let's just drop that just a tiny little bit. That's all right. There we go. That should do it. Just the tiniest little bit. So yeah, I don't necessarily think that something like miraculous is going to happen here today. I don't think that anybody's going to like blow up this channel and suddenly like everybody wants to be my YouTube friend or whatever. I don't think that that's the case, but it's just one of those things that you gotta try new things. You gotta, kind of hopefully give people a little bit of a greater insight, because so many people don't necessarily. Oh my God. Oh goodness. Me. So what if I did this? Yeah, I'm still kind of getting the socials together here. I'm still trying to get a sense for, kind of exactly what I'm hoping will come to this, beyond just like, I kind of hope that people can feel a little more connected to me and to some of the stuff that I like to do. Interestingly, like I love the interactive aspect of streaming, and kind of what opportunities that affords beyond just it's fun, because I think that there are so many people who have questions for people, for pastors who have questions for people that they don't always like have someone that they can go to talk to in person. So it's a great way for people who aren't normally connected to a church regularly and don't feel like they can just walk into a random church and start asking the pastor questions. Although I love that kind of stuff. Like, please, like any day, if you're local to my area, you can 100% just come and bug me. Be like, I have 1,000 questions about the everything, and I would love to talk to you more about that. I said, sure, let's do it. Let's hang out. Let's grab coffee. I've got my coffee. I don't know if you've got your coffee, but I've got my coffee here. and let's talk about things. Or if you're just here right now at the church and we'll just talk about things now. I think that's great. That this affords people who aren't connected to a church in a non-threatening environment where, depending on your YouTube settings, you could even be anonymous. If you don't have your actual name set up as like your, YouTube profile name, which is, if it is, it is. So you can just kind of come here and plug in and just be like, hey, I don't have a pastor, and you're talking about this, and I'm curious about it. So can I ask you a question? Sure. I can't get to everything. So there's that an opportunity. It's an opportunity for people who are members or attenders at my church, again, to kind of get a better kind of understanding of like the inner workings, because like we preach at our church for a very short period of time. It is a quick kind of thing that we do. We have fairly short services. They come in under an hour, 90-ish% of the time. And we have lots of other stuff that happens in our services that matter and make sense and have an impact on people's lives. So I think the longest sermon I've ever preached at the church that I'm serving now is like 18 minutes long. And that's not a lot of time. There is so much that goes into crafting a sermon, the study, the research, the prayer, and all of those things that go into it, and lots of facts and tidbits and directions that I could go that we'll never get to in a week. And by the time we touch on the subject again, you will have forgotten all about it. And so this is a way to, like, as I'm going through it, as I'm looking at the scriptures, as I'm looking maybe at a study guide or at a commentary, or maybe if I'm doing some more research online, that you can kind of see, like, hey, here's the things that he's thinking about. Does this make it into the final cut? Does it not make it into the final cut? And sometimes it doesn't make it into the final cut just for time. It's just like I've got 15-ish minutes and I can only get so much in there. And so some of it's just like, okay, that's just not gonna, that joke or that factoid or that whatever the case may be, it doesn't fit. Sometimes it's just, when you're only dealing with 15-ish minutes or so of content of preaching, certain things just don't make it in because it's not the focus for the day. And it's not that it doesn't matter. It's not that it's right or wrong. It's just, I've got 15 minutes. The overall general theme is XYZ. And it could go a bunch of different directions. It always can. There are always so many things to explore and to find in our scriptures that it's impossible to just fit it all in. Even going line by line cannot be done, will not be done. So at a certain point, you just kind of have to make a decision, say like, okay, you know what, this part isn't the most, it's not what I feel is the most appropriate piece to have in there. It's not that it's not important. It might just be that, hey, for this time in this place, we're going to talk about this instead. And that's totally, I think that's totally fine. And so when I do these things, I'm hoping to get the kind of what's the name of it? Discipline to start doing this very regularly. Actually, my actual hope is to do this every single week. But there's a reason that I posted this on my personal pages and I didn't share it with my church page yet, because I don't want to make promises that I can't keep. Point. And so for today, I knew I could promise that I would do this today. I have no idea if I'm going to have the time discipline to do this again next week. Well, so for example, I'm looking at my calendar right now. I do. So next week at this time, I have a meeting. So I obviously can't do it next Monday. Now it may happen on Tuesday. I'm not sure if I want to do Mondays or Tuesdays going forward. So this week I have a coffee meeting during this like kind of time slot tomorrow. So I obviously I had to do this today, not tomorrow. And so I want to give myself permission to not go all in on this, while still saying, you know what though, this could be kind of cool. This has some potential here to help me kind of better connect with folks and to see what they're up to, and for them to see what I'm up to, and just kind of take it from there. All right, everything seems to be working at very least. So yeah, all right, cool. So that's me rambling on for quite some time. Now, the one thing I am not sold on. All right, so let's take a look here. When I do this, okay, it does work. So you can see all the things, but I can't control that Bible app window without covering the whole screen for a second. So I'm not 100% sure kind of the best way to juggle that. In my older desk setups and my other, when I've done this kind of thing before, it was just set up very differently for me. And so for my current desk, with my current computer, with my current all my stuff, it doesn't work for me to have a second monitor here for certain things. I used to be able to like put the software that's required to compile all of the neat things that you see here on my screen. As a reel? I didn't mean to. I'm gonna put this here. I forgot. Go away. Not what I said. I said, link. Rude. I don't know why once you paste something once, it just goes, all right, you never need to paste that again. That doesn't make sense to me. I'm being a horrible streaming host right now. Come on. All right, so that's fine. Anyway, I really, I love how simple now my desk has become, and if you could see it, you would be like, this doesn't look simple at all, dude. I don't know what you're thinking, but it's not simple. It's a lot simpler than it used to be. And right now it's actually very cluttered. There's a lot of stuff on my desk that should not be on my desk for what I'm doing right now. But at the very least, there's less electronics plugged into my computer and my desk setup right now. It is a lot less busy from that perspective. So that's kind of what I mean by that. There's still a lot of junk up here. Not junk. Well, actually right now. I got like pictures, I've got books, I've got remotes, got camera batteries. Normally what I would do, especially before doing a live stream, is to make sure everything is pristine and clean. The good news is you can only see from this side. This side's all mostly clean. There's some stuff tucked away back here that you cannot see. And no, you can't. You're not going to. But over here, there's just a bunch of stuff that I've been working so hard on this office and this desk to get it just right. But there's still a few things that I just don't have good places for. And so I would like to work on that. But you know, it is what it is. I'm gonna pull this back here for a second. And yeah, isn't that okay? So that's kind of neat. I change which direction I face depending on what I'm looking at. So when I'm looking at my computer, you're seeing it kind of naturally, and this is mirrored because it looked. I really like having the camera up here on the right hand of the screen. I left a space for it, and having the text to the left. But if I was looking the wrong way, you'd be like, that looks weird. See, right now I'm looking at the camera, but it looks like I'm looking away from the text that's on the screen. So anyway, that's a little insider baseball for that kind of stuff. So yeah, doing some cool stuff here. All right, then neat, right? Now, what I would like to do at some point is make sure that I really also want to get my TikTok kind of rolling again, and hopefully be able to go live there. But you need 1,000 like followers on TikTok before they give you access to that, and I have like 12. It's really kind of crazy. So, not quite sure what I'm going to do with that, but yeah, it is what it is. All right, so let's jump into this week's topic. And you'll see on the screen there, you can see the text that we're focusing on. It's right below where I am. It's down that way. Matthew 28, verses 16 through 20. You know, I don't love the way that looks, though. Give me a second. That looks way worse. That looks super way worse. Does that look better? Not really. But what if we did... That looks okay. There. Okay. That's fine. That's better, at least. So we're looking at specifically the section of the Great Commission this week. We're working through a message series called Building a Longer Table. We're talking church growth. We're talking evangelism. We're talking about sharing the story. We're talking kind of specifically about preparing our church, preparing ourselves for people who don't normally come to churches, or who have never been to our church, or people who have been rejected from other churches for whatever reason. There's, all of that kind of internal and external preparation. And this week we're talking about going out and actually inviting folks and telling them our story, and telling them our story with God, and telling God's story. And so naturally we end with the Great Commission out of Matthew, which is my kind of like most defining section of scripture. It's one of the most motivating for me. It's one of the most influential on myself as a Christian and as a pastor. But in order to look at it, I do want to back up to the first verse in 28th chapter. So here we go. We're going to look Matthew 28, starting the first verse. After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb, and suddenly there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descending from heaven came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. For fear of him, the guards shook and became like dead men. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid." I love how the dudes are afraid, and the women are like, "Yeah, we got this. Do not be afraid. I know that you're looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he has been raised, as he said. Come see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he has been raised from the dead, and indeed he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him. This is my message for you." So they left the tomb quickly with fear and great joy and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them and said, "Greetings." And they came to him, took hold of his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." All right, so that's that first little section. I think it's helpful to talk about who the first people to tell the story is. It's women. This is one of the kind of pivotal pieces of scriptural information that I use. Say, like, women belong in ministry. Women should be pastors. Not just they can be, they should be. That we need their voices. We need to hear their proclamation of good news. And folks will do kind of some real dancing around that fact that God says the first people who were going to preach the resurrection, the greatest news of all time, the most important single act in all of human history, their job is to go teach it and proclaim it and declare it to other people. And God doesn't, by accident, choose women. The men are afraid. They've run away. The men disciples, the women have returned. And their job is to start teaching people about what they've seen. That's preaching. That's proclamation of the gospel. Now, folks will try to twist themselves up in a knot because they'll read things in Corinthians. They'll read things in like 2 Timothy or 1 Timothy. It's leaving my brain at the moment. They can't possibly be considered preachers or pastors. Their only job is to go tell the men so that the men can go do this job. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. The first takes priority. These are the first people to preach the good news. Not some good news, the good news that the Savior of the world has been raised from the dead. That's what all preaching is. If your preaching doesn't somehow tie back into that, then you've completely missed the mark. There's something that has gone horribly wrong. And so, why does that so far behind? Oh, that's why. So if that's the essence of preaching and pastoring, is declaring the good news of the resurrection. Are there other parts kind of involved in that? Like, of course there are. But that is the central message of God's story. And the first people to be trusted with it were women. And I don't buy the argument that no. They were just like the temporary messengers so that they could let the real men, the right people, do the job. If that's their only function, they wouldn't even have been noted. They wouldn't have talked about it. They would just there's something else would have happened in the story. If only men were meant to tell the story, then it would have been men at the empty tomb. It would have been men there. That doesn't mean dudes aren't important. That doesn't mean dudes can't preach, because obviously I think they can and they should, because that's what I do. But we cannot deny the role that the two Marys in Matthew's gospel play in being the first to tell the story, to teach the story, to teach stupid men that they have gotten it wrong. Because that's the thing. Jesus kept telling these dudes, I'm coming back. This is not going to be at the end of the story. I'm going to be taken. I'm going to be punished. I'm going to be crucified, but I'm coming back. Don't be afraid. It's going to happen. This is the plan. And the dudes scatter. They run. They don't have the strength of faith. They have gotten the story wrong. They have misunderstood, or they have not had the dedication. They have not had the faith to hold fast to what Jesus has taught them. The women return. They get the slightest inkling that something incredible is happening. They go, we got to go fix with these guys. These guys are afraid. They're hiding. They don't know what the story is. They don't know God's plan. They don't know the purpose. They can't see it in faith. So I need to go and remind them in my faith, because of what I have seen of what the truth is. That's preaching. That's pastoring. Women can, should, and need to be pastors. Now, not every woman should be a pastor, just like not every man should be a pastor. There are plenty of people with tons of gifts that are good for the church, but that aren't meant to be in pastoral roles or preaching roles or leading roles or teaching roles. Not everybody's meant for that. But to exclude all of them because of verses taken out of context from other portions of the New Testament, refuting the role that these women have, no, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't like it. No me gusta. No, thank you. All right, I'm just checking out a few things here. All right, cool. Yeah, it's gonna be kind of an interesting thing, and that's not like denying that the verses that come later in our scriptures, some of which were written before, some of which were written after this, allude to the fact that there are times and places where specific women maybe shouldn't be preaching and teaching, because that happens. But to take all of that so out of context and then suddenly women have no part in telling the story for the rest of time, cut your nonsense. Cut your nonsense. All right. So that's the first little bit. Let's then jump into the next bit, the report of the guard here on the 11th. While they were going, some of the guard went into the city and told the chief priests everything that had happened. This is cool too. After the priests had assembled with the elders, they devised a plan to give a large sum of money to the soldiers, telling them, "You must say, his disciples came by night and stole him away while we were asleep. If this comes to the governor's ears, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble." They took the money and did as they were directed, and the story is still told among the Jews to this day. So kind of neat thing here. These guys are so afraid that they are bribing people to lie, which is not uncommon in the modern world or the ancient world. But like, we cannot let this guy's followers believe this stuff. And I don't think they necessarily believed the story of the guards. I don't think they necessarily believe that Jesus has been raised from the dead at this point, because if they did, then they would all be like freaking out in a different way. But they definitely have a sense of like, we cannot let this get any traction. We cannot let this spread, because otherwise everything that we have done to put this thing down is over. We will never get our authority back. We have to convince people that this guy is dead. They saw him die. is gonna stay dead. We're gonna make sure this dude stays dead. I don't know what. Oh, I had that on the wrong setting. All right, cool. I'm glad I didn't miss anything. Or maybe I'm sad that I left myself in denial. Whatever. So yeah, they're actively working to suppress this information, to suppress this knowledge, and that's kind of nuts to me. That's kind of there we go. I was looking for how to get chat in here, and I had been doing it wrong this whole time. All right, so I don't actually need. Okay. Hey, cool. I'm learning. This is my first real stream on YouTube. As I mentioned earlier, I used to do a lot of streaming over on Twitch, and it was this weird kind of combination of pastor stuff and video game stuff and lifestyle stuff. And every time I tried to get kind of regular folks, like not gamery folks, involved and engaged, everybody looked at me like I had two heads. And I kind of get it, because even for so many people, even today, the live streaming gaming thing is not for them. And it's not supposed to be for everybody. I'm not trying to pretend that it is, but like it's almost like a foreign concept. And Twitch is, even though it's owned by Amazon, it's perfectly legitimate. People don't have, especially older folks, not old, but like just like people who didn't grow up with it or people who were never into it, have a layer of hesitation about it, I think. They have a sense of like, I don't want to sign up for something. And on Twitch, you cannot participate in live stream. You can't message people. You can't do it unless you have a Twitch account. And they don't want to sign up for it. They don't want to have that something else to sign up for. YouTube, everybody has a YouTube account, because almost everybody that has ever existed has a Google account of some kind. And so it's kind of a neat thing to migrate over here. And I always hesitated for it. I always hesitated to come to YouTube for live streaming stuff, because quite frankly, it's not as good of a platform for it. But it has been getting better, so I'll acknowledge that. And so that helped me make the move. But especially for more gaming oriented things, it's just not as good. And you're harder to find, and you're harder to get people to engage with it. But for me, for what I'm hoping to accomplish the most with this change, with bringing this live stream, hopefully weekly, is to engage with an audience of people who already engage with this kind of content with me, particularly during the course of the week. I'm not trying to do everything today, but I've got some other stuff kind of rolling and going, or like brewing, percolating in the background that should be even more helpful to things, but we're not there yet. I kind of wanted to see just how well I handled just what you're seeing right now. So anyway, that's my little rant and rave about that. So all right, so this is kind of interesting, because it really it's really short in Matthew's gospel, which I love, because it doesn't give you a lot to work with. Some of the other gospels do a little bit better job of talking about that post-resurrection stuff. But let's go ahead and jump in it. Matthew 28 through 16 through 20. That's the one that's on your screen, both in the terms of the text being displayed. It's also the official verses of the day that show up below me on your screen. And so let's take a look. Matthew 28, verses 16 through 20. Now the 11 disciples, remember, we lost one along the way, went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. When they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted. I love that they include that. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. And remember, I am with you always to the end of the age. And so one of the things that I have always kind of taken to heart is this is at least in Matthew's gospel, this is the absolute last thing that happens. I mean, you could see it right there. Like, Mark's gospel starts that's the next thing after the word age. And so I've always kind of heard this as marching orders. And so I'm writing that down here in my notes. Jesus, especially when you combine the end of Matthew's gospel and you look at the end of Mark, and you look at the end of Luke, and you look at the end of John, this is when Jesus ascends to heaven. This is the last thing he does before going back to the Father. So Jesus has died. Jesus has been raised again. Jesus has come, and he's giving the disciples like, hey, all right, you've seen me. You've seen what's possible. Now it's your turn. I'm handing this over to you. I am entrusting the message of what we're doing here, what we've done here, and what's going to happen next to you guys. I'm going to go do the heaven thing. I'm going to go be with the Father. So you all, this is your time. And the way I think about it is if you've got literally seconds left, if you've got just a few moments to let people know the single most important thing, that you're not going to waste it on it'd be nice if you did this, or it'd be kind of neat. I when you're a pastor, you have a lot of moments with people in their last minutes. Sometimes literally in their last seconds, but in their last minutes, their last hours, their last days, you spend time with people. And I got to tell you, a lot of folks, when they're coming to the end of their time, when it's those last few moments with friends, with family members, they try everything that they can to make it count. They do everything that they can to say the things that need to be said. They don't waste it like, okay, guys, make sure my cookie recipe is preserved. They don't say, hey, can you make sure that the rent bill gets paid? I mean, as your family, with the loved one who's dying, you should remember those things. But like, that's not what the person who's leaving is talking about. No, they're reminding people that they love them. They're reminding them of like, hey, you matter to me. And this thing, especially if you have worked to build a legacy, if you've worked to build something up, you're kind of giving out those last little bits of wisdom, reminders. You're not going to waste your final breaths on something stupid, on something immaterial, on something that just at the end of the day isn't going to matter that much. You're not going to say, oh, hey, it's been a great life. Remember, don't wear white after Labor Day. Like, nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to waste their last moments on something that's not important. And these disciples, these followers of Jesus, these people who have spent and invested all of this time and energy, who have sacrificed so much. He's gathered them together. He's like, I'm going back to the Father. We've got just moments left. What would you do? Would you throw away those last breaths? Be like, all right, guys, peace out. You're kind of jerk. Hey, I don't like those sandals on you. Hey, become a better cook, because you kind of suck at it, man. Like, no, you're gonna say, like, this is the single most important thing that you need to hear. And these instructions at the end of Matthew's gospel, and they're not just found here, of Jesus saying, like, guys, now this story, this thing that you have experienced for yourselves, you have got to go let people know. You have to let them know that everything has changed beyond anybody's ability or capacity to understand. And it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be hard. But guys, you got to do this. This is your purpose now. Your purpose has been to learn, and you're still going to learn, because, like, let's be real. Read the book of Acts. They're learning as they go, and they're really screwing it up along the way. But you need to go and tell this story. You need to go to places that you never thought you'd go. You need to encounter people you never thought you'd encounter. You are going to meet with and eat with and come into conflict with people who you have been told your whole life to avoid. And you have got to go do this thing. You've got to tell them the story. You've got to invite them into relationship with you and with this thing that we're doing. And they've got to hear the story. Has to be done. When you tell a Jewish person to go out into all the nations, you're telling them, go to those people that you've been taught your whole life are unclean. Go to those people your whole life who you've been taught are your enemies. Go to those people who your entire life you have been told will defile you and make you unholy just by being close to them, just by interacting with them, by having a meal with them, by hearing their story, by experiencing their lifestyle. You have to go be with those people and tell them this story. Dude. I don't know if this exact line will make it into this weekend's message, but I say it often. I don't say it a lot in church anymore, because it really rubs some people the wrong way. But some people, sometimes that's what you need. But God doesn't make suggestions. God and Jesus, when he says go do this thing, like, it's not. I'm writing that down. That one may end up in this week. No suggestions. When he says go feed people who are hungry, that doesn't mean if you feel like it. He says just go do it. And he says clothe the naked and visit people in prison and all those things. He means do it. Not when it's convenient, not when it's easy, not if you feel like it. But he says do it. And he says the way you treat the least of these is how you treat me. And that has repercussions, that has implications. He's letting you know that treating them well with love and with care is not a suggestion. And when he says go to the places and people that make you uncomfortable, that you have been taught to fear and revile and avoid your whole life, and let them know of what I have done for them and what God feels towards them, I can't hear that as a suggestion either. I can't hear that as something reserved for a few. I hear that if you have been transformed, if you have had this experience of the love of God in your life, you're called to go help other people do the same, to experience that same thing. And that makes us uncomfortable. That makes us worried. That makes us nervous. That makes us feel especially if we've tried it before and failed at it, or if we felt like we failed at it, make us feel unworthy. Because no, I tried that. I tried inviting a friend, and they didn't come, or they came and they hated it, which would not happen at our church, but that's a different problem. Or like I had kids, because that's how so many people that's how you make disciples. You do it in the bedroom. You know. If you don't, then you're too young. Get off the stream. And I raised my kids in the church, and I brought them to Sunday school, and we did catechumenic classes, or we did confirmation classes, or we did whatever the heck it is. And then they went off to college, and they said, yeah, it's all a bunch of bull. I don't believe any of it. So I'm afraid that my faith isn't strong enough. I'm afraid that I don't have the tools and the ability and the capacity and the spiritual maturity, or whatever the heck it is, to do this. So I'm going to let other people do it. Nope. Not how it works. And it looks different for everybody. Not everybody's going to be out talking to absolute strangers. It'd be nice if you did, but that's not necessarily the point. It does look different for each person. It does take on different flavors depending on who you are and what your personality is, and where you work, or whether you're in school, or whether you're towards the end of your life, or whether you're younger, or anywhere in between. It does take on different dimensions, and we are all called with slightly different gifts. So this gets expressed differently based on your situation and your life and your gifting. So it doesn't look the same for everybody, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't need to come from everybody. I'm just gonna write different contexts, which is a churchy word, but I'll know what that means. Text, same mission. Different context, same mission is kind of how I'm gonna. I write kind of just like a weird flow chart kind of thing when I do sermon prep. So you don't get to see that because I'm still not quite sure of the best way to capture my iPad screen on OBS. I've heard of ways to do it. I saw a video on it a couple of years ago. I want to say I think he was doing it for YouTube videos, but I gotta see if I can figure that out one of these. Whatever. So yeah, it's kind of a neat thing that can. Why would it have it be that low? What's up, Shadow? I think both the cats are in the office now. That's exciting. And if you're not a cat person, then that's okay. I am. What is going on here? All right, so that didn't do what I wanted it to do, but show it on here. Oh, but I want to do this. All right. Anyway, and so the question really kind of ends up being then. I don't think. All right, so here's one of those things that's going to come up in preparation for this. I mean, I think I want to look a little bit more at some of the instances of making new disciples. So look at Acts a little bit. Because that's where you'll find most of the, kind of specific examples of those disciples saying, all right, let's go make some new disciples. We're now the apostles. We got a title change. but no pay increase, which is the worst kind of promotion in the world. When you get the bigger title, but you don't get a better pay. If you know, you know. If you don't, I'm sorry. You're probably a boss that nobody wants to work for. I shouldn't say stuff like that, but I'm gonna. So the Book of Acts has lots of kind of those early examples of these apostles going and making disciples. There's the Ethiopian eunuch. There's the reading the Isaiah scroll. As an outside. There's also Cornelius and his household. But my women's ministry director preached this past week, Brita, shout out, you're awesome. Talked about him as the focus of her message this past week. So I don't really want to talk about him that much. But he may come up again, just maybe briefly, kind of like as a throwaway line. Then there's the crowds. So I'm trying to, with this message series, it's been largely philosophical. Like, what are the philosophical underpinnings of what it means to be welcoming and hospitable and to prepare ourselves? And I think for this one, I think it needs to be a little bit more actionable. I think it needs to be a little bit more actionable this week. I'm trying to think. Trying to think of ways. Is this a breaking actionable versus theological? And not that those are two totally distinct categories, but again, when you've got 15, 16 minutes, it is hard to do both. And while doing both of them justice, while doing both of them at a level that I would be happy with saying, okay, I said enough about this for the people who were there. And I want to say that the last 3 weeks, we've kind of set the stage and set the table. Get people to understand how and why we should be doing these things. So I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time on the why. So, but if it's just a list of do's and don'ts, I hate it. It's just bad preaching, I think. I'm really toying with this idea of there might be something really unique in here. Like really unique. Like to do something I've never done before. Interesting. I think there's some. Okay, so this is the hard part, because see, now I'm leaving behind the scripture study, and my brain has gone more towards the, ooh, here's a cool thing I could do. Here's a fun thing I could say. Here's a impactful way to deliver this that I'm not going to put out into the ether, because I think, as much as there's nobody, I don't think there's anybody in here live right now, but these videos are available after the fact. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. I don't want to make, I don't want to ruin something that could be really kind of neat this weekend. So speaking of those kinds of things, it's a really tough and fine line for me, because some of the really cool things that make a really cool impact in person at our services on our campus do not translate online. They just don't. They don't work. They don't click. They don't. Especially if it involves interaction or engagement. Like, we pre-record it. It's not done live. That's on purpose. I prefer it that way. So the question, but if I say I'm just cutting this whole section out of the online service and I'm only going to do it in person, either you have to make the in-person service longer and maybe you have to trim something out somewhere else, or you make your online service super short to account for that missing section. And that is something that is a necessary trade-off for doing online digital content that is separate and distinct from your in-person experience. It's not just a live stream. It's not just a recording of what happens in person. Don't think that works. But I often don't have the capacity to make two completely different experience. Like, it would be hard for me to craft something special for in-person and for something special in online in the same slot. But maybe I'll be able to do that this week. I'm really curious where that could go, where that might lead me. I have signed up for the same newsletter on 2 different email accounts, and it means that I get the same email twice at the same time, and I freak out because I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got so many messages. So yeah. All right, now we're good. This moment, like, oh my gosh, I got 2 emails in like 3 seconds. What's going on here? Yeah, I wonder what kind of questions. One of the questions that comes up, and it even comes up among pastors, because sometimes pastors don't like preaching about this. They don't like going there. Are these instructions already fulfilled? In other words, were these instructions meant for the disciples to go and start spreading among the Gentiles, and then they kind of did that a bunch? And honestly, everywhere, or like almost everywhere. I'm sure it's like, are you sure you still want us to do it? So, what was I saying? So I guess kind of in their minds, like, this was a instruction to the disciples to get this thing started, and then once all nations had been reached, which you'll always find groups of people isolated in parts of the world, that the instruction is completed, it's over, and that we don't have an instruction to all followers of Jesus to then go out and to do these things like that the commissioning of the disciples is something that's completed, and that our role is simply to work on the discipleship of those that we have in our midst, and that we shouldn't be actively pursuing new people to experience Christ's love in the context of a church. That if they find us, great, we're happy to be here for them, but we're not going to actually actively go out and try to find them, because that's wrong and that's bad, and it may interfere with their already held beliefs, that we're not meant to try to convert people because they know about Jesus, they've at least heard about him a little bit. So it's not my job to try to convince them to follow Jesus. And I think the biggest danger in that is not me kind of deploying folks to convert their Jewish friend or their Muslim friend or their Buddhist friend or their what's that other traditional Japanese religious whatever, or even their Mormon friend who are like Christian-ish, or their atheist friend. I almost think that the role of the modern church is to not convert, but to get some of their friends to realize that the Jesus that they think they've been following is a made-up Jesus that was created to spark power and war and wealth at the expense of the people that Jesus cared about. And I almost think that is a greater calling of the church to help spread the true, or at least a more faithful representation of Jesus than the one that many have been led to follow. I think teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. So many churches focus just on, we need to get these people saved, and then we can teach them, the right way to live, to be a Christian. That has nothing to do with what Jesus taught his disciples to do, or has very little to do with that. There are so many things that people are taught in churches that's what good Christians do, that you keep, like, Jesus said very little about, or said next to nothing about, or they've extrapolated out where Jesus said XYZ, so you shouldn't do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You shouldn't pretty much do anything ever. And then add on these layers of complexity, but then skip over huge sections of Jesus's teaching of radical love, of radical acceptance, of radical transformation of this world, so that it doesn't look like the world that he lived in and looked more like the kingdom of heaven, and Folks just gloss right over that in so many churches. They don't teach folks to do everything that Jesus commanded them. They teach them to follow their church's doctrine and purity statements and theological yada yada yadas. They don't spend enough time saying, Jesus taught his disciples to do this, so you do this. They say Jesus came and saved you from your sins, and so this is how you don't sin. Really not the biggest piece of what Jesus talked about. Don't hear me wrong. Not saying that stuff doesn't happen, but too many churches ignore and neglect the red words. Jesus doesn't say here, now therefore go baptize people, teach them everything that Paul said, whether it was universal or not, and teach them everything that the theologians have said and your pastor has said in his non-denominational megachurch down the street. And remember that he's with you. Like, does not say that. Jesus doesn't say, obey everything that politician X or politician Y has commanded you to do, or party X or party Y has commanded you to do. Jesus says, tell people, teach people to do the things that I have commanded them to do. And that list is a lot different than the list you'll get in a lot of churches these days. A lot different. I can't believe I did that. It's commands versus all church party. Now, the one problem I'm having with that fun line of thought, and it is a fun line of thought, is it gets back into that theological headspace kind of thing. It's a little less actionable. It's again, this is more about the why. Why do we need to do things instead of why versus how? I need to write that. Because I'll be honest, I tend to be better about the why. Because I think the how can be so radically different for each person that when you've got such a short period of time, it's hard to convey enough versions of how while still making sure they understand why. They have to understand why. People have to understand why we do this. And that was one of the biggest points of that whole last rant I just went on. But I don't think it's enough. I really don't. I think it's an interesting dynamic that I'm coming across here, and I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this really in such a way that this is fun. So this is something that happens to me, and it doesn't happen every week. So I've spent the last about an hour. We've talked about other stuff, going through this and talking about the philosophy behind it. And I've got a very scribbly notepad or iPad with kind of just big picture ideas. And I think most of it I have to throw away before I start writing. And that's something you should know. All right, we're gonna change this. We're gonna go big picture on this one. All right, so here's something you need to know about me as a pastor, as a preacher, as somebody who spends his not all of his time. I do lots of other things during the week as your pastor. Don't get me wrong. But as a pastor, as a preacher, as a sermon crafter, as a message creator, a lot of times I go down a rabbit hole and I'll spend all this time and energy, and I'll be like, "This is really cool. This is really great. This is good content. This is faithful to the scriptures. It's faithful to our church's teachings, and I'm not going to use any of it." It happens way more often than you'd think. We talked a little bit kind of early on about how not everything makes it in. And sometimes that means everything that I've worked on for an entire morning is great conversation. It's great things to think about, but doesn't hardly any of it actually make it in. And so it happens a lot. It doesn't happen every week, and usually so some more insider baseball. The overall theme for this message was set months ago. I build out several months at a time, kind of the general direction that I think we are going to go for conversations, topics, scriptures, and all of that for several months in advance. This whole sermon series was building up. We have a big event this Sunday after our worship services, so this was meant to build up to that. The sermon that's coming after, starting next week, the following week, is also very intentional. But I don't always have like, oh, this is the message that it's going to be when I do that. I have an idea. Sometimes I do, I'm like, I know when we get to this scripture on this day, it's this topic in this series, and this is everything that I'm going to say. It's just the details that need to be worked out. Sometimes that does happen. And sometimes that happens, and I get to that week, and I'm like, nope. We're going to keep the topic. We're going to keep the scripture, but we got to change the directions. It's not clicking, or it's not right based on what's going on in the world. But sometimes I just kind of go into it kind of like, all right, I know I kind of want to do something on this topic around this scripture, and we're going to see where the Spirit leads. And I get to the time where it's like this one, and we do a bunch of stuff, and we're like, all right, we're exploring, we're reading the scriptures. We're doing some research, we're doing some homework, and sometimes you'll get 3 or 4 ideas. Okay, I could go this direction, this direction, this direction, this direction. Other times you'll sit here for a while, and you'll be like, all right, we're going here, and we're doing this, and we're doing this, and you do the whole thing, and you're going, that's really cool, but like, I don't know. I don't think it's right for this week. I don't think it's right for this time that we're living in. And then sometimes, and this is the worst, I do the bulk of my writing in 1 or 2 sessions or sections over the course of one day. Sometimes 2. The rest of the time is in prep. It's in prayer. It's in research. It's reading, and it's sometimes it's watching other pastors who've preached on it, or watching a blog, or watching or whatever the case may be, a podcast. That's usually that goes on for days before I write. And a lot of this has happened off screen even before you and I have been here together to do this. You're actually coming in the middle of it. You're not getting totally blind. Let's just see what happens. No, it doesn't work that way. But I do all my writing in 1 or 2 chunks. I like it best when it's in 1. And I do very little editing. I do my editing ahead of time, and some of you can tell. But I tend to sit down usually on a Wednesday morning, and I take my laptop and I go to a local coffee shop. I've got a couple that I like to work out of, and I just sit there and I get not home coffee, even though home coffee is cheaper. and often better, different problem. And I'll go bang it out, and I'll be like 3/4 of the way through it, and I'll be like, nope. All that stuff I've prepped, all the stuff I've cut, none of it's right. And we're gonna start over. And we're gonna start over right now. And I'll be there in the coffee shop with a blank sheet of paper. I'll delete everything. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. But it's a consequence of just letting God speak. I really, really firmly believe in the intervention of the Spirit. Hey, this is what you should do. This is what you shouldn't do. And it's not always easy. It's not always clear. Sometimes I hear wrong. Sometimes I have done, I think, my due diligence, and I've done my praying, and I've done my scripture reading, and I've done my homework and my research, and I've done all those things, and I'm like, yeah, this is it. This is it. This is it. And I go through all the work, and I write it all out, and I get to Saturday, or Friday or Saturday, depending on the day, and we record it online. Yeah, that was it. And Sunday, and I do it, and it just, nothing. Just doesn't click, doesn't work. I have preached a couple of really awful sermons in my life. I think only I could articulate. At the church that I'm serving now, I don't think I've had a bad sermon. I've had bad delivery. I had this one sermon, I remember, I recorded it online, and I think it came out pretty good. And everybody who saw it online and talked to me about it was like, oh, it was great. It was good. It was, it got some good points, led by the Spirit. You're good. But like some of the people who saw me preach it in person went like, man, that was rough. What's going on? And it wasn't even that the content had significantly changed, but my mood was changed. I was having a rough morning. I don't even remember exactly what it was, but like my head wasn't right and my heart wasn't right. And so it caused the sermon's delivery to change. My inflection, my attitude was all wrong, and it made this sermon that I think had some good points, but it was a little correctional. It was a little like, hey folks, and you got to do correctional sermons. You have to do it. You cannot pretend to do this role of pastor without sometimes looking at folks and be like, guys, we're not getting it right. There's something as a church, as a culture, as a society, we're messing this up. We got to do better. And so while the online version of it was filled with, hey, things aren't the way they're supposed to be, but man, we can do better, and God's on our side, and this is great. It turned into just cranky Josh all Sunday morning. I was pissed. I was in a bad mood. I don't know if it was, the kids were rough that morning. I don't know if it was, I read the news too much. Never read the news Sunday morning. That is my advice to pastors. And they might say, well, then I'll miss something and I don't know if I need to talk about it. Never let something that fresh in. Even if it means you have to wait a week, even if it means you have to do a correction or you have to issue something during the course of the week, even if it means people are like, hey, pastor, this thing happened yesterday or it happened overnight and you didn't talk about it and you didn't pray about it and you didn't you didn't rewrite your whole sermon on Sunday morning, which I'm not gonna do. It's too fresh, and emotions are too raw. And I think when we let our emotions be too raw when we preach, we get ourselves into real trouble. That being said, the academic, no, we're gonna ignore stuff that's happening. We're just gonna read the scripture. We're just gonna very stoically approach this. No, that doesn't work either. But you do, I think in all situations, you can and you must make sure that your emotional health on an issue is at the best place that it can be while still being timely before we address certain things. Like when the flood hit Texas and I knew people were freaking out, I did not address it that Sunday. Instead, because it happened like over the weekend, instead I got with the team. I said, we're gonna get some money together. We're gonna go help people out. We're gonna send that money. We're gonna get it into the hands of the people that needs to be getting in the hand of, and then we're gonna talk about it. And then we're gonna address it in service, because the raw emotion of it can be too much, and you don't have all the information. You don't have all the details. You don't have the ability to take a step back and evaluate. And I think all of those things need to happen with almost everything that can show up on the Sunday morning news, whether that's local or national, or on your news feed on your phone or your social media or whatever the case may be. Because you haven't had time to vet it. You haven't had time to read multiple sources. You haven't had the time to evaluate things for more than just a couple minutes on most Sunday mornings, at least for me. Like, I get up in the morning and I get myself ready and I clean myself up and I try to at least hang out with my kids for a couple minutes, and it's not always easy. And I'm trying to be attentive and get coffee and figure out breakfast, and I'm trying to pray, and I'm trying to get my headspace right to approach this incredible, awesome thing that I get to do every single week, just about. And I can't do that if I'm sitting there going like, man, did you see what Governor X did this week? Did you see what the president did or didn't do? Or did you see what, happened in far off places in the world? I can't do that as I'm getting ready to go into church. And sometimes people are like, oh, did you hear about that? I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't touch that stuff before I come here. And it's not because I don't care. It's not because I'm not going to get to it. It's just, I know for me, I need more time to process that kind of mess before I can talk about it intelligently and from a place of spiritual maturity and emotional health. Especially bad news, because that's most of what's out there. Most of what's out there is awful, bad, yucky, horrible things that people do to each other. And I just, I look at so many awful things that people have done to each other, and some of the awful things people have done to one another in the name of Jesus, that just, it makes me mad. It makes me so frustrated that I just can't even hope to touch that kind of thing and be able to do what I do on Sunday. All right, I say all that. And so I'm thinking now, so our incredible women's ministry director was preaching this past weekend, and she's got a real way with speaking and preaching to me. I don't know if she does this on purpose, if she's watching this or she goes back and watches this. Like, I don't know. She speaks right into my heart sometimes. Very convicting. So she was saying, she was referencing when Jesus told his disciples, it's not what goes into your mouth that defiles you, but what comes out of it, right? We're talking about the guests we least expect, and how so many people are uncomfortable to have people that they've been taught to not associate with around them. And so consuming their aura, even people like, oh, you can't be around those kind of people. They'll infect you with their wickedness. And that's just 98% of the time it's crap. But that aside, but she's talking about how, and Jesus mentioned, it's not what goes into you that defiles you, but what comes out of you. And it's 100% true. But if you consume too much negativity, if you consume too much hate, what comes out of you is going to be hate too. I'm a little out of focus. Can anybody see that? I'm going to see if I can fix it. I don't know why it keeps losing focus on myself. If you thought you saw my knees just there, no, you didn't. And I'm not trying to say Jesus is wrong. Don't hear that, because I think it's all contextual. But if you consume too much hate, if you consume too much animosity, you're gonna give yourself a tummy ache, and it's rotten, and it'll spoil, and all you're gonna be able to do is throw it up, because it's that toxic for you. So in those scenarios, in some cases, if you consume things that are so harmful to you, you will not be able to help yourself but to throw it back out. That's not good. Because now I want to talk about that this week. Please tell me. Not what I was hoping for. I wonder. What's in a wonder ball?
Nothing.
Okay. All right, so that's kind of neat. Yeah, there's. I'm a little torn now, because what consumption? Regurgitation. Sweet tie-in. More Y stuff, though. It's more Y stuff. I don't want more Y stuff. We need more do stuff. Interesting. Poor traction so far. Very odd for stuff that I post. So yeah, it's there's something that ties back into that. I didn't mean to hit that my pen onto the my stylus. I need to go back here. Doubted. It's interesting because in this telling of the story, it's the 11 who go. And some believed and worshipped him, but some doubted. I want to know what the numbers are. Like, was it like 6 and 5? Was it 7 and 4? Was it 8 and 3? And which one? Like, 3 of them were like, yeah, we're down, man. 8 of them were like, I don't know. It's kind of weird. Oh. Might be a fun question. I don't know if it'll end up in there, but that could be a fun question. Doing that this week. Am I doing both? Probably. I wonder. We go 1,000 different directions. I've got lots of good why, and I'm gonna have to really condense that section. I wonder if there's something to be said. Yeah. I'm curious about this. That's about 20 by 9. Okay, that's almost perfect. Got this. I doubt that'll change anything, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, there's some cool stuff possible here. I'm just not quite sure. It's about striking that balance. It's about striking that balance. What's this email? That's not helpful. It's not what I wanted. Grumpy. I tried skipping breakfast today. I've been eating way too much junk the past couple days. I'm trying to get back on track, eating and drinking the right things. And man, I want some breakfast. I want a donut. I want 3 donuts. No, that's not true. A breakfast pastry could go down good though. You know, like an orange scone from Panera. If you've ever had one of those, they are truly, truly awesome. So yeah. I guess, you know, when it comes down to it, this whole idea of, okay, so it's not a suggestion, because God doesn't make suggestions. This obviously matters to Jesus. And what seems to matter to Jesus is not just people's salvation, but people's living into the kingdom that he is established. So, and the kingdom that he established has certain expectations. And those expectations are not the ones that are often expounded upon by preachers and pastors and churches. So, what do we do about it? And how do we do that thing that we need to do? How? Very specifically. Like, what tools would people need, want to see? What line or elevator speech or what handout or tool or I think people need to be alleviated of the fear of rejection and failure. That gets people like I'm almost there. It's like I'm almost having an intelligent thought, but I'm not quite there yet. I think I froze. I did. And nobody told me. Nobody told me. Cable, I think, is no good. Cable. Okay, that's okay. Okay-ish. So I know I said I was going to go till 10:30, but I'm actually going to call it right here. Appreciate those of you who came and hung out with me, popped in every once in a while. Appreciate those of you who are going to watch this after the fact. I'm still going to work on what the final schedule for this is going to be, but I think we're going to do this again. And so keep an eye out on my socials. Maybe keep an eye out on the church's socials if I decide to be brave enough and put this up there. So that you can be a part of this process. And I'm for collaboration. And if you have questions, the answers and the questions that we have in these spaces may just end up in a sermon one day. Maybe in that week's or maybe in another one. So thank you for hanging out. Take care of yourselves. Take care of one another. Have a great day. Do something today to help you take care of yourself and to show yourself a little bit of love. Bring a little bit of joy and happiness into your own life. And if you can't find a way to bring joy and happiness into your own life for whatever reason, find someone else that you can. That can bring joy. You can bring joy into their life, because by doing that, I promise you, it will pay dividends for you and for yourself. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye now.